Okay, we're going to proceed on with this model of the or assembly of the blower table, and next thing I've got to tackle is the slide base for the motor. Now I've found a slide base on the internet, but it doesn't have a 3D model, so I'll have to quickly make up something to model that slide base so I can make use of it. Now, first thing we're going to need to do is find out what the measurements off the motor are for the bolt pattern. So I'll just quickly measure the bolt pattern of the motor, and we'll see we need 317.5 millimeters, and we also in one direction, and we need 100 and that didn't work very well. Let me just try that again, and remember to clear this time, and we get 266.7 millimeters in the other direction. Those probably translate to sensible inch dimensions. We'll find out soon enough. But in any case, that is relatively inexpensive, but I don't have a 3D model, so I'm going to have to create something to make use of in my assembly. So that you can see that my motor dimension 317.5 millimeters is basically the center to center between these two bolts, so that's where my sliding has to take place. So I've got to start by modeling these Z-shaped pieces to create this. Let's get started with that if we can. Probably the easiest thing to do is to get on the top plane and just sketch a center rectangle and define that's going to be where my 317.5 dimension is. And that is going to be the other direction, which is 266.7 millimeters, and that gives me a framework for starting this base. So my sliding is going to take place along this line, and I need to get that motor. I want to be able to slide the motor back and forth kind of like this, so I can tighten the belt. So that would be in the 317 millimeter dimension. So that's where my sliding has to take place. So that gives me an idea where to begin with my bracket line, and I need a slightly larger rectangle to define the outside of the base. So I'm going to need another rectangle, looks like that, and this is really just making a sketch to define the points I need to get started. So I'll just hit this line here and get the origin, get those coincident, and later on I'm going to play with the dimensions a little bit. I'll just set this up as, say, 50, and need some room in the front for the adjustment screws, so we'll make this one say 100 millimeters. Okay, and the last thing I need is an overall width, and we'll make that, wants to be something in the order of 300, 350 maybe. Everything's all black, so we can get going. Now, what I'm going to do is establish a plane to make off the front plane, insert reference geometry plane, and I'm going to pick that point there to define the front of my piece of metal, and sketch on that plane and draw the shape the metal that I need. And that point there is going to be coincident. And my height looks to be about a couple of inches, or 50 millimeters or so. And it sounds like about the same for the legs. And I'll make these different so that you can adjust them as required. Make them about 60. And let's try inserting. Let's finish that off. Let's insert, it's going to be a sheet metal part, so that's a base flange. Looks to be thickness of this metal looks to be about 3 millimeters. And that looks good. And the length of this thing up to vertex, we can use that opposite end that we defined. There we go. So that gives me 1/2 of my motor base, and I'm going to put some slots in there. It's not quite long enough to line up properly. Let me just see here. If I go normal to that, I want to get that line really should be in the center. So if I modify my original sketch, I can probably take that down to, let's try 340 and see if that looks a little better. Could go even further. So let's try 330. And sort of refining it as I go, getting it to look the way I want. And that's starting to look like a good place for a slot. The